All right, so we're diving into dispute resolution today,
Mhm.
specifically arbitration versus going to court.
Uh-huh.
We've got some really interesting material to go over from Lee and Tran Law,
Oh, yeah.
a Vietnamese law firm that specializes in this kind of stuff.
Great.
So we're in good hands.
Definitely.
I'm already curious about a few things.
Okay.
Is arbitration really as fast as people say it is?
Right.
Is it way more expensive than court?
Yeah.
And what about choosing your own judge?
That is an interesting one. Yeah. So basically, with arbitration, you're stepping outside of the traditional court system.
Okay.
You're agreeing to have an arbitrator,
Mm-hmm.
a neutral third party, make a decision that's legally binding.
So like a referee, but for like a really specific game.
Exactly. Someone who understands the rules of that particular match.
I like that.
And just like not every sports game goes to a referee.
Right.
Not every dispute ends up in this private courtroom of arbitration. It
Oh.
usually comes up in commercial disagreements when there's a pre-existing agreement in place.
You mean like an arbitration clause that I've seen in contracts sometimes?
Exactly.
Okay.
It's that clause that says, hey, if we have an issue with this contract,
Yeah.
we're going to settle it through arbitration, not court.
Interesting.
Lin and Tran Law actually points out a model clause from the Vietnam International Arbitration Center,
Mm-hmm.
VIAC for short,
Do
just
it.
to show what that looks like in an actual contract.
All right. So we know when it's used,
Mm-hmm.
but why would anyone pick arbitration in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
What's the big draw?
Well, one of the biggest draws is speed.
Okay.
So think about it. Arbitration centers deal with a fraction of the cases that regular courts do.
Mm-hmm.
Like in 2016,
Okay.
VIAC handled only 155 cases,
Wow.
while the courts in Ho Chi Minh City, they were dealing with over 65,000.
Wow. That's a huge difference.
It is.
No wonder people say it's faster.
Exactly.
But what about the cost? Isn't it a lot more expensive?
It can be. But you also have to think about you get to choose your judge, essentially.
Wait, really?
You choose an arbitrator that has specific expertise in your particular area of dispute.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So like if my dispute's about an international contract,
Right.
I could pick an arbitrator that specializes in international law.
Exactly. You could choose an arbitrator who's even a foreign lawyer.
Oh, wow.
Or, say, an expert in construction if it's a building dispute.
Right.
So that kind of control you don't get in a traditional court setting.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah,
What about confidentiality? I've heard that's a big plus for arbitration.
definitely. The hearings are private
Okay.
and records are kept confidential.
Mhm.
Unlike a lot of court proceedings that are, open to the public.
Right.
So for businesses that have sensitive information,
Yeah.
they're worried about reputational damage, this privacy is a big advantage.
Arbitration sounds great.
Yeah.
But I know there has to be some downsides. What's the catch?
Well, one thing is that arbitrators have a lot of autonomy when they're making their decisions.
Okay.
Maybe even more than judges in a formal court.
So more room for interpretation,
Exactly.
which could be good or bad.
Yeah, it depends.
Depends on your perspective.
Right. And then there's the cost.
Yeah.
We touched on that a little earlier.
Mm-hmm.
The fees can be significantly higher for arbitration than in court.
Okay.
Like, for instance, VIAC's fee for a dispute worth about $44,000.
Mm.
It's over $3,700.
Ouch.
While the court fee for just the first instance is only around $1,800.
That's a pretty big difference.
Yeah.
So you're paying a premium for that convenience and the speed and expertise.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And one more thing to consider is that the arbitrator's decision is final.
Okay.
So you can appeal a court judgment.
Yeah.
But arbitral awards, those are pretty much final and binding.
No, interesting.
There are some exceptions, but they're very limited, like for procedural errors
Mm-hmm.
or if the law's been misapplied.
So it sounds like you're trading the right to appeal for maybe a faster or more conclusive resolution.
Exactly. It's about finding the right balance for your specific needs.
Okay. So choosing between arbitration and court really comes down to your priorities.
Yeah.
You have to ask yourself,
You do.
is a faster private resolution worth the potentially higher cost
Yeah.
and fewer appeal options?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. We've covered a lot so far.
We have.
What arbitration is, pros, cons.
Right.
How do you know when it's the right choice over going to court?
That's a great question, and I'm happy to delve into that further.
Okay.
There are a few situations where arbitration really shines, and I think it'd be helpful to explore those next.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So are you ready to hear about those scenarios where arbitration really comes out on top?
Yeah, absolutely. It's
Yeah.
like picking the right tool for the job.
Exactly. Imagine a situation where time is really of the essence. Like, maybe a business deal is on hold because of a contract dispute.
Mm-hmm.
Every day of delay is costing money.
Yeah,
So in cases like that, the speed and efficiency of arbitration, that can be really invaluable.
that makes sense. A drawn-out court battle, I mean, that could really cripple a business.
Absolutely. Now think about industries where discretion is really paramount.
Okay.
So let's say you've got a tech company.
Mm-hmm.
They're embroiled in a dispute over intellectual property rights.
Right.
They might really want to avoid all the public scrutiny that comes with a court case.
Yeah.
Protect their trade secrets, protect their reputation.
Right.
In those cases, the confidentiality of arbitration,
Yeah.
that becomes a major advantage.
Oh, I see what you mean. So it's like choosing a private meeting room versus like a public town square to hash things out.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then there are these really specialized disputes
Yeah.
where you need a decision maker who really speaks the language, so to speak.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a complex financial dispute that requires some in-depth knowledge of derivatives.
Wow.
Or it could be a maritime case, involving some intricate shipping regulations.
So in cases like those, that's when it becomes super important to be able to pick an arbitrator with specific expertise.
Exactly. It's like having a specialist doctor for a very particular medical condition.
Oh, I like that.
You want someone who really understands the nuances of the case.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm starting to see why arbitration is becoming so popular, especially in the business world.
Right.
But I am curious about the actual process, though.
Okay.
How does it all work?
It's actually more straightforward than you might think.
Okay.
While the details might vary, depending on the arbitration agreement, the chosen institution,
Right.
there's a general framework that most arbitrations follow.
Okay. Walk me through it. What's the first step?
Okay, so it all starts with one party initiating the process.
Mm-hmm.
They send a notice of arbitration to the other party. They outline the dispute and, state that they want to use arbitration to resolve it.
So it's kind of like filing a complaint in court,
Yeah, sort of.
but more informal.
Exactly. The next crucial step is selecting the arbitrator, or sometimes arbitrators.
Okay.
And as we've already talked about, this is a key advantage because, the parties actually get to choose who they want. They get to choose people with the right expertise.
Like putting together your legal dream team.
That's a great way to put it. So once the arbitrator or the panel is in place, the process moves into the evidentiary phase.
Okay.
That's when both sides gather and exchange documents.
Mm-hmm.
They conduct witness examinations.
Okay.
Basically, they're presenting all the evidence to support their claims.
So kind of like the discovery phase in a court case, right?
Yeah.
You build your case, present your side of the story.
Precisely. And just like in court, there are rules of evidence and procedures, to make sure everything's fair.
Right.
But one key difference is the level of formality. Arbitration tends to be much more flexible, a lot less rigid than a typical court proceeding.
Got it. Now, I know we talked about the arbitrator's role earlier, but can you break it down for me? What are they actually looking for when they're trying to make a decision?
So the arbitrator acts like a private judge, essentially,
Okay.
carefully evaluating the evidence,
Mm-hmm.
applying the relevant laws or contract terms to reach a decision.
Yep.
The goal is to be really impartial and objective,
Right.
make sure both sides get a fair hearing.
And their decision, as we talked about earlier, is legally binding, right?
Yes.
Just like a court judgment?
Exactly. The final decision's called an award.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually written down,
Okay.
explains the reasoning and the relief granted to the winning party.
So what if one side isn't happy with the decision? Can they appeal it, or is that just it?
Well, that's where the finality that we talked about earlier comes in.
Right.
You can appeal a court judgment, right?
Yeah.
But arbitral awards are generally final and binding. There are very limited exceptions, like for procedural errors
Mm-hmm.
or misapplications of the law.
So it's a trade-off, I guess.
Yeah.
You get a faster and a potentially more conclusive resolution,
Right.
but you sacrifice some of the appeal options that you'd have in traditional court.
Precisely. It's all about finding the right balance for your particular needs.
Okay, that makes sense. Now I want to shift gears a bit and talk about international arbitration.
Okay.
What makes it different from the, domestic kind that we've been talking about?
So international arbitration, as you might guess, deals with disputes that cross borders.
Mm.
Think companies from different countries,
Yeah.
contracts that are, under foreign laws,
Okay.
or issues that come up in multiple jurisdictions.
Right.
It's basically arbitration, but on a global scale,
Oh,
with its own set of complexities, of course.
I bet. What happens when the parties speak different languages,
Right?
have different cultural norms?
Right.
That's got to make things a lot more complicated.
Absolutely. And those are just some of the unique challenges that come up with international arbitration.
Yeah.
Often the parties actually have to agree on a common language for the whole proceeding.
Wow.
And cultural differences, those can sometimes impact how the evidence is presented,
Okay.
how the arguments are made.
It sounds like international arbitration requires a lot of planning and coordination ahead of time.
Definitely. And that's actually where specialized international arbitration institutions come in.
Okay.
So these are organizations like the International Chamber of Commerce,
Mm-hmm.
the London Court of International Arbitration,
Okay.
the LCIA,
Okay.
and they provide frameworks, rules for conducting these international arbitrations,
Right.
making sure there's fairness, consistency across borders.
So they're kind of like global referees for international business disputes?
That's a great way to put it. They offer a neutral platform for resolving these really complex disputes. And they have well-established procedures
Right.
for everything, like
Right.
from selecting the arbitrators
Mhm.
all the way to issuing the awards.
This is all so fascinating. We've covered the mechanics of arbitration, international side of things, but um, I'm curious about the kind of the human element.
Okay.
What kind of person makes a good arbitrator?
Mm-hmm.
What skills do you need to be really good at that job?
That's a great question. Being an effective arbitrator, it requires a really unique combination of skills.
Yeah.
You need legal expertise,
Okay.
strong communication skills,
Right.
and a good amount of emotional intelligence.
Okay. Let's break those down. What does it mean to have legal expertise in this context?
It's more than just knowing the law.
Right.
It's about understanding how to apply it, fairly and impartially in actual real-world scenarios.
Sure.
A good arbitrator needs to analyze complex arguments.
Mm-hmm.
They have to weigh evidence objectively,
Yeah.
and ultimately reach a well-reasoned decision.
So it's not just about being like a walking legal encyclopedia.
Yeah.
It's about being able to think critically
Right.
and apply the law in a nuanced way.
Exactly. But legal expertise on its own, that's not enough.
Okay.
Communication skills they're equally vital.
Okay.
Arbitrators, they need to be able to communicate with the parties,
Mm-hmm.
explain their reasoning clearly,
Right.
and just manage the whole proceeding, fairly and efficiently.
So it's a bit like being a judge, a mediator, and a referee all at once.
Exactly. You're absolutely right. And finally, you can't underestimate the importance of emotional intelligence.
Okay.
Arbitrators, they need to be able to understand their own emotions,
Right.
manage those,
Okay.
as well as the emotions of the parties involved.
Yeah.
They need to stay calm.
Mm.
They need to be objective,
Right.
even in really highly charged situations.
Wow.
And create a respectful and productive environment for working through the dispute.
So being an arbitrator, it's no walk in the park.
It's not. It's a demanding role.
Yeah.
But those who excel at it, they really do play a crucial role in resolving these disputes.
Right.
Fairly and efficiently.
This has been really enlightening.
Yeah.
We've explored all the ins and outs of arbitration,
Mm-hmm.
the international aspects,
Yeah.
even what it takes to be a good arbitrator.
Right.
But there's one question I've had in the back of my mind this whole time.
I'm intrigued. What is it?
With all the advancements we've had in technology,
Mhm.
especially AI,
Right.
you think AI could eventually take over the role of a human arbitrator?
Oh, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a topic that's generating a lot of debate,
I bet.
a lot of discussion in the legal community.
I can imagine. I mean, it brings up some pretty big questions about the future of dispute resolution.
It does.
Yeah.
Absolutely. On one hand, AI is already making a big impact on the legal field. It's being used for everything, from legal research, contract analysis, to even predicting case outcomes.
Right.
So it's natural to wonder, could it eventually be an arbitrator?
Mm-hmm.
Analyze the evidence, apply the law, make those tough decisions.
It's a really fascinating idea, but I have to admit, I'm a little wary about handing over those kinds of decisions to machines.
Yeah.
So what are some of the benefits and the concerns about AI arbitrators?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one that we should definitely explore further.
Okay.
There are compelling arguments on both sides of this.
Yeah.
And it's really important to understand both the potential and the pitfalls here.
Okay. So let's dive into those AI arbitrators. What are the potential good things?
Well, people who are for AI arbitration, they often talk about eliminating bias, human bias.
Right.
Algorithms, they're immune to emotions, subconscious prejudices, things that can sometimes, cloud our judgment.
So it's like having a perfectly neutral judge.
That's the idea.
Okay.
And on top of impartiality,
Yeah.
you have the potential for even more speed and efficiency.
Right.
AI can process huge amounts of data way faster than we can.
Makes sense.
So that could lead to quicker resolution.
Yeah, and we already know that arbitration is often faster than court.
Exactly.
So AI could really boost that.
Absolutely. And then you have the cost effectiveness argument.
Okay.
You develop the AI system,
Yeah.
and then you don't have to pay salaries.
Right.
Benefits.
No time off.
No time off. Exactly.
Right.
So that could make arbitration more affordable, more accessible.
Yeah.
Especially for, smaller companies.
Right.
Who might not be able to afford the traditional methods.
Those are some really strong arguments.
Yeah.
But I have to say, the idea of machines making these big decisions,
Right.
especially in legal stuff,
Yeah.
it makes me a little nervous.
I understand.
What are some of the concerns there?
You're right to be cautious. One of the biggest concerns is this black box problem.
I'd say.
A lot of AI algorithms are super complicated.
Right.
We don't really know how they reach their decision.
Okay.
So this lack of transparency raises questions about fairness and accountability.
Makes sense. If you can't understand how a decision was made, it's hard to, really trust it,
Right.
especially when it comes to a legal dispute.
Exactly. And another concern is that these AI systems might actually perpetuate biases that already exist.
Even if that's not what we want.
Even if it's unintentional.
Wow.
AI algorithms, they learn from massive data sets.
Okay.
And if that data contains biases,
Yeah.
well, the AI might learn them, replicate them in its decisions.
So even though sometimes AI is supposed to be the solution to human bias,
Yeah.
it could actually make things worse.
It could if we're not careful. And
Yeah.
then there's the question of accountability.
Right.
What if the AI system gets it wrong? Makes an unfair decision? Who's to blame?
Right.
The people who developed it.
Yeah.
The parties who said, okay, we'll use AI arbitration.
These are tough questions.
They are. They're tricky legal and ethical questions that need answers.
It sounds like we're not quite ready to let AI be the judge.
I agree. It's an exciting area with lots of potential.
Yeah.
But we have to be really careful, address those concerns
Right.
before AI really takes over dispute resolution.
This has been a fantastic look at arbitration.
It has.
We've gone from the basics all the way to the future with AI.
We have.
I feel like I get it now.
Good.
Thank you so much for, walking me through it all.
It's been my pleasure. I always enjoy getting into the details and thinking about how dispute resolution is changing.
Big thanks to Lee and Tran Law
Yes.
for the insightful materials that got this whole conversation started.
Absolutely.
If anyone out there is dealing with a dispute,
Yeah.
needs some expert advice, check out their website.
Great resource.
They're fantastic.
They are.
And to everyone listening, whether you go with arbitration or court,
Right.
think it through.
Absolutely.
Get some expert advice.
Yeah.
And pick the path that works best for you.
Great advice.
Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and remember, the best answer isn't always the most obvious one.